Luka and Kyrie each had 33 points. Dallas puts together in the final 5 or so minutes of the game, they went afterburners and they beat Minnesota 116-107. The final Dallas basketball team gets the win. They're up now 3-0 in the Western Finals. Now, I did not play in the NBA, but I think if it's a best of 4 out of 7 and you've won the first 3, you're doing pretty well. You're doing pretty well. Now, the game ended on a 14-3 finish or 16-7 run, depending how you want to break it down. The Mavs, a 5th consecutive playoff win. This after the man being credited as a glue guy, Derek Lively, left with a sprained neck. Oh, my neck! He took an accidental, not body blow, a headshot from Karl Anthony Towns in knee, which I don't think is good. But no team in the history of that sport has ever rallied from 3-0 down to win. Game 4 will be Tuesday in Dallas. The better story is in, that's right, the losing locker room. So that is where we're going to go. Another close game, another game that came down to the final minutes that goes the way of Dallas and not the team from Minneapolis. So let's discuss the question. Why have Anthony Edwards' Wolves been so bad to the bone down the stretch? So I've got Electoral College, Contaminated, and the Multiverse. And we will combine all of these things together, and we are going to make a pancake, which is what the Minnesota basketball team is at this point. They're becoming a pancake. And the Dallas basketball team feasting on that pancake. But in these games, with the Mavs, the margins, despite the 3-0 margin in favor of the Mavericks, the margins have been extremely thin, as they often are, and all that matters is who is better in the moment, right? In any of these athletic competitions, it's who's better in the moment, and you don't have to hear the Dumbo on the radio tell you, just by paying attention, you know that Luka and Kyrie in this series have been head and shoulders above Ant-Man and Kitty Cat. And the Wolves have been running around in the final minutes of these games like a headless chicken. Bark, bark, chicken! And they played like chicken. And this game Sunday night, a perfect microcosm of the underlying condition for the Timber Puffs in this particular situation. Game on the line. The Wolves wagon was on empty. They were sputtering down the stretch. And now they were down by 10 points or so most of the game till they flipped it on in the second half a bit. Got back, had the lead. Not a huge lead, but they had the lead. Game was tied at 100 with 6:58 to go. Mavs finished the game outscoring the Wolves 16-7. Dallas, in that stretch at the end of the game, final 6+ minutes of the game, shot 75% against the number 1 defense of Minnesota. The Wolves shot 25%. And Luka and Kyrie in that close of game had 10 points. And Ant-Man and Kitty Cat combined for 4 points, all of them by Ant, who played well in the third quarter, but that's about it. And overall, a special place in the Suck Hall of Fame for Karl Anthony Towns, who should get a game ball from the Mavericks. Should give him a game ball, because in this matchup, and really this series altogether, but we'll just focus in on the game 3, Karl Anthony Towns, he won the Electoral College. He is now the mayor of Barf City. So congratulations to Kitty Cat, now the mayor of Barf City. Karl Anthony Towns took 18 shots. He missed 13 of them for 14 points. Now, 0 of 8 from three-point range. Karl Anthony Towns, in his head, that little cartoon bubble over his head, I'm convinced he believes he's a better shooter than Stephen Curry. But then, when you actually see him in these big moments, he shoots like John Starks back in the old. That's an outdated reference, but you get it. A real clunker. Real clunker. Now, page 2. So Anthony Edwards was asked what in the box score, what about the box score from Game 3 stood out? He was asked about that. His response, he said, quote, "They," meaning Dallas, had 31 free throws. We had 17, close quote. So how do you classify Anthony Edwards, star of the Minnesota basketball team's performance in the Western Finals, and that commentary? So I have this as unbecoming and unacceptable. In the lead up to the Western Finals, I paid attention. Now, I have a talk show, so I have to pay attention. You probably don't have to pay attention. But let me tell you the bullcrap that was being said and written about Anthony Edwards. He was being propped up as a hybrid. It was like a master class on how to build up a ball player. He's got the skill set of Michael Jordan, and he's got the toughness of Mike Tyson, a couple of old 1980s references. Bigger mouth, bigger game, Anthony Edwards. However, the proof is in the pudding. In the Western Finals, he has been contaminated, Anthony Edwards, in key moments with dragon breath, wallowing with a defeatist attitude. Edwards now has not one, but two more excuses than he does wins in the Western Conference Finals. Remember the famous line that you really just cringed at when you heard it. Game 1 of the Western Finals, Dallas, Minnesota, and the 22-year-old Anthony Edwards essentially said he was gassed. They were exhausted. He was exhausted. Too hard. It was too hard for Minnesota. And now he's got the Zebras. So wear and tear, fatigue, and officiating, yet the game was anyone's game. It was a toss-up, and it's not like there were a series of terrible calls in the final couple of minutes of the game. So even if the officiating was bad, and I don't disagree that the NBA product in terms of officiating is Bush League, but still, that was not the reason that the Wolves lost this game. And for Anthony Edwards, what an abject failure he has been in this series. Do better and be better. This was supposed to be your coming out party. You ain't going anywhere. All right, last word here. So if you look out at the landscape here, the East and the Western Finals are both 3-0 series leads. We told you before all this began, television wanted Boston and Dallas. They want Kyrie, the bad guy, going back to Boston, even though all the Celtic players worship at the altar of Kyrie. But that's the TV matchup they want. Big market, Dallas, Boston, sports crazy place. That's what they want. Now, Minnesota's not done yet. Well, we'll focus in on this. Naz Reid is not throwing in, at least publicly, not throwing in the sponge for the Timber Puffs. Not yet. He said, quote, if anyone can win 4 straight in this scenario, I think it's us, close quote. So what are the odds that Minnesota will come back? What are the odds they will come back in this series? They have not won a game yet. They suck at a time you cannot suck. So I'm going to open up the MALLER Sportsbook odds. They're not zero. They're not zero. The MALLER Sportsbook odds I have at plus 5,000. Now that implies a less than 2% chance, which again is not zero. At this moment of time, we are watching the surgical dismemberment of the Wolves. Late, close game situations, Minnesota has been absolutely eviscerated. The kind of performance in these games that gets a coach fired. It's hard to fire the coach, though, because he's already on crutches, but this is the type of performance where your star player has been a no-show in key moments, and your other star player can't make a shot to save his life from outside. This is the moment that gets a coach fired. Regardless of all that, the question at hand was, what are the odds Minnesota will come back? And well, it's 2% chance plus 5,000. Regardless of that, we live in the multiverse. So if you go far enough, okay, bear with me. If you go far enough, you'll fall into Wonderland. And on a different planet, living in a parallel universe, Luka and Kyrie collide. Kaboom! They collide, right? And maybe a practice injury. They get knocked out. Not career-ending, but knocks them out for the rest of the series. One or both. And then Anthony Edwards and Kitty Cat stop overdosing on stupid pills. And at some point, here's the way I look at stuff like this. At some point, a team will come back. We've seen teams get to a Game 7 but not win a Game 7 in that sport. But a team eventually will come back. And whether we're alive or not, somebody's going to come back from down 0-3. And it just hasn't happened yet. But I do know this. Minnesota can be totally loosey-goosey now because the eulogies have already been written. They're toast. And they deserve to be written because of the way they played. With every Wolves win, the knob gets turned a little bit more on Luka and the Mavericks to not screw this up. They should win in 4 games. Maybe Minnesota wins a single game. You get a gentleman's sweep out of it. But if the Dallas Mavericks futz around with this and don't close it out, Minnesota gets a game, and then they get another game, and all of a sudden, well, now you got to win or else you got to go to a game 7, things can change very, very quickly. Now, do I think that's actually going to happen? No, I don't think that's actually going to happen. Are you talking about Kitty Cat playing well for 4 games in a row? Come on. Come on now. I don't see it. It's not regular season matchups against Sacramento and San Antonio. It's not.